years, we have been trying our best to reason with the villains. But I know villains. See, bully will never stop bullying. He will keep stealing from you all the time.
Man, you criminal! You criminal! What are you doing? Record this, man. Record this.
Well, the day is done. It's almost sunset here in Lethbridge. It's warmed up a bit. In the courthouse next to me, we were jammed into a small room for a full day of arguments in the prosecution of Artur Pawlowski. I want to take a minute on that because I understand that there is a large court room in this building that may hold over 100 people, but for some weird reason that no one could articulate, they refused to open that up for the people. They kept Artur Pawlowski's supporters in the hallway or even outside. I don't know why they did that. Justice should be accessible to everyone. There's a saying, justice should be done and justice should be seen to be done. I thought it was punitive, but I'm grateful that I had room in there, and I typed as fast as I could on Twitter to give people an update who weren't in the room. I would sum up the first day with one word: pitiful. And what I mean by that is there was one judge, 2 police, a clerk, 2 prosecutors, 4 lawyers for Arthur, all to do what? Was he charged with blocking a highway? Was he charged with some violent act? No, of course not. He doesn't even have a truck. He wasn't part of any blockade. The entirety of the prosecution for 3 charges was going through a speech, a sermon, a political talk, a pep rally that he had totaling 19 minutes for truckers in a saloon at the Coutts border. That's it. We were going through line by line Artur Pawlowski's sermon. And the prosecutor was saying, oh, he said they were roaring. That means it was an insurrection. And then the defense lawyer said, no, Arthur always talks about lions roaring. And then the prosecution said he wanted to paralyze the country with the border. And the defense said, no, he was referring to the Polish solidarity movement and a general strike. And obviously I agree with the interpretation of the defense counsel, but why are we having this debate at all? Why is all this public money and all these donations for Pastor Arthur's legal defense fund being spent going through line by line on a political speech that did not incite any law breaking, in fact, there was a gross moment when the prosecutor named Stephen Johnson complained to the judge that Artur Pawlowski was depicting Justin Trudeau as a villain and was inciting hate against politicians. And at that point, the judge spoke up and said, inciting feelings against politicians is not a crime, or at least not one that we're here to adjudicate. I'm glad the judge spoke up, and that gave me a little flicker, a little flash that maybe this judge is alive to the freedom of speech aspects of this case. We're done. It's just after 4 p.m. Tomorrow, the court will resume at 10 a.m. At that point, the defense will go through, there will be some more arguments made. They'll probably go back and forth a bit, but it was a general agreement that the matter will be done by lunchtime. It was an unusual trial in that there was no witnesses. There was no testimony. Everything was agreed to in advance in an agreed statement of facts, and then there was that 19-minute video. I have to tell you, it is most un-Canadian to spend a day in a court going through a pastor's speech, weighing every word and every nuance. Is this a crime? Is this a crime? And as Sarah Miller, the lead lawyer for Artur Pawlowski, said, the Crown has not met its burden of proof, not beyond a reasonable doubt. In fact, the crime of mischief carries within it several defenses, like he had the color of right to be there. Here's a quick example. The prosecutor was saying he was with these criminals, but in fact, none of them were convicted or even charged of crimes back then. In fact, none of them have been convicted even since. Arthur had to pass through a police checkpoint to get to the saloon. Police didn't stop him. There were police in the saloon. They didn't stop him or arrest him. So how could any of what he did possibly be illegal? And how could he have counseled a crime if no crime is being committed, at least none that's been proven in court? The whole thing is such an obvious political vendetta. And it comes back to the story I was telling you about a week or two ago, which is that Danielle Smith, the new Premier of Alberta, campaigned for the leader of the UCP party on abandoning these political vendettas against pastors and small business people that are hung over from the lockdown. That was Jason Kenney's legacy, not Danielle Smith's. And yet here we are in a 2-day trial in Lethbridge, Alberta, going through line by line a pastor's sermon to see if it was criminal or not. It's not just a waste of resources. It is a signal that freedom of speech is in jeopardy in Alberta. I find it deeply disturbing. I'll be back here tomorrow morning at 10 to cover the last hour or so of this hearing. And then I'm back to Toronto, the world headquarters of Rebel News. I'm glad to have been out in the field. I'm glad to see Arthur again. I think he's confident. I think he knows that the law is on his side. This is a spurious case. I'm embarrassed for the government of Alberta. And there's only a certain amount of time these prosecutions can continue before they're no longer Jason Kenney's prosecutions, but rather they're Danielle Smith's prosecutions. I was grossed out by the prosecutor today. I think the worst line was, as you know, Artur Pawlowski is of Polish heritage. He was born in Poland. He knows the stories of Poland, first under the Nazis, then under the Soviets, and then the liberation from the Soviets with the Solidarity movement, Solidarność, as it was called. And in Pastor Pawlowski's speech to the truckers a year ago, he referenced the Solidarity movement and the gall, the chutzpah of this gross prosecutor to complain to the judge that how dare Artur Pawlowski refer to the Solidarity movement. How dare Artur Pawlowski, a Polish immigrant who grew up under the Soviet jackboot and who was liberated by Solidarity, how dare he refer to Solidarity in a sermon and political speech? A prosecutor paid for by taxpayers in Alberta, representing the justice minister, is here telling Artur Pawlowski, a Polish pastor, that he may not invoke the memory of the Polish Solidarity movement. I wish Danielle Smith were here to see that grotesquerie, and she would have shut down this prosecution right then. I'll be back here tomorrow. You can see all of my reports at savearthur.com. I probably wrote about 200 little tweets throughout the day as each ebb and flow of the court went forward. I tried my best to be accurate. If you want to chip in to help Artur Pawlowski's legal dream team, please do. I was only imagining how much today's hearing cost, and that's part of it too. The process is the punishment. The government of Alberta is foisting hundreds of thousands of dollars in legal fees on Artur Pawlowski, and thankfully, Albertans and Canadians and even people around the world have risen to the challenge. If you can help, go to savearthur.com. That's it for me. I'll be back tomorrow. I'm here in Lethbridge, Alberta today and tomorrow to cover the trial of Artur Pawlowski, just the latest political persecution of the Christian pastor who wouldn't stay silent during the lockdowns. To help crowdfund Arthur's legal defense, go to savearthur.com.